Hi, my name is Blaine Bettinger, and I want to talk to you very briefly about forming and using genetic networks using a new tool called Genetic Affairs. This is going to be just a brief introduction to this tool, but hopefully it will get you enough information to get started and start exploring this tool on your own. So the goal of this tool is to take matches and shared matching and form clusters. Clusters that might look something like this. This is an example of clusters we're going to work with in this example. This is the output of the tool. And so what we're going to do is learn how to create this output and then learn how to use this output to understand what these clusters are and how they might help us with our genealogical research. So we want to take this output that looks like this and get to a point where it looks something like this, where we've identified the possible line of each of these clusters and can potentially use that to tell us about the relationship to individuals within those clusters, both to ourselves and to each other. So the way we create this cluster is using a tool called Genetic Affairs. It's at geneticaffairs.com, and you can either register for a new account, or if you're already registered, you can click on Members Login. I also want to note that when you're on this initial page at geneticaffairs.com, if you click on the FAQ there at the top, that will also give you a manual which has step-by-step instructions and pictures, and as I understand it is being updated as new information is provided and available. So that could be very helpful for you as well. So once you have an account, and an account is free at Genetic Affairs, there are some paid options that we'll talk about, including for the clustering. But once you're there, you can then add a profile to the website that enables you to create these clusters. Because obviously you're going to have to give it the input it needs to be able to create these clusters. And the input it needs is access to your account at either 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and Family Tree DNA at the current time. So what we can do is, for example, add another website here. And what we're going to do is we are going to add an Ancestry DNA profile to this, an account to this, this account. So we click on Add Ancestry DNA Account, and that will take us to a login page. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide it now with our login information and our password. And of course, we always want to be very cautious about granting our login information. In fact, many of the company terms of service require us to keep that confidential. So we obviously don't go share these passwords publicly. One thing you could do, for example, that people have suggested is to create a free account at Ancestry that you share your DNA profile to, and then you could provide that new free account that login information here. And so what that means is at any time you can revoke the DNA sharing to that free account you've created, and thus you can always be in control of your DNA account. That of course will only work at Ancestry DNA because they have that DNA sharing option. Once you've provided login and password information, you'll get a pop-up that says, are you sure we're going to check the credentials? You click yes, and when that happens, then you see that it's being checked, and once that's done, then you'll see you will have information for your accounts attached under websites here. So you can see I have accounts at Genetic Affairs for Ancestry DNA, for 23andMe, and I also have some Family Tree DNA. I've had to add each of those individually, so it will recover all of your Ancestry DNA profiles that are associated with your account, people that are sharing with you, for example. Same for 23andMe. At Family Tree DNA, you'll have to add, of course, each of your individual profiles one by one to provide those. Once you have a number of, once you have even one profile, you can create now these cluster charts. So what you would want to do is you will want to click under where it says profiles here, either here for Ancestry, here for 23andMe, or here for Family Tree DNA. You want to click that, and then it will take you to a page that lists your various profiles. Maybe it's just one, maybe it's multiples. In order to create this cluster chart, you can see where it says auto cluster there. Click on that rounding arrow, click on that, and then that will take you to a page where you can begin to create this auto clustering. Now you can see here there are several different ways to select thresholds. Now you can just use the default and click perform analysis there, or you can change the matching thresholds. Here I've provided the various thresholds for each of the high and low thresholds here. So you can select those. If you don't know what to pick, then just stick with the defaults. But once you can come back and change those defaults to get more matches, fewer matches, matches of different sizes, and so on. Now I will warn you that every new run does take credits, which we'll talk about, but you can come back and adjust those thresholds. Once you've selected the thresholds you're going to use, here I've selected 900 for a high and 9 for a low, meaning it's going to look for shared matching with matches in your match list that fall between 900 and 9 centimorgans. So for example, a sibling wouldn't be included in this because they share too much DNA with you above that 900 centimorgan threshold. So you'll click on perform analysis there. And then you'll see it will ask you, are you sure you want to perform this analysis? It's going to cost you 25 credits. So you can say, well, no, cancel, or you can click yes, perform this auto cluster analysis. Now on the issue of credits, you can go back to the member page or the initial page and you can click the prices icon there. And what you'll find is it will tell you that there are various fees associated with genetic affairs if you choose to use them. So for example, if you want to get a monthly update on someone, meaning genetic affairs will scan your match list and will tell you what new matches you have at a certain threshold that you set, that costs 18 credits per profile. A weekly update is 9 credits per profile, meaning you'll get a notification once a week for any profiles you select this for. And if you want to get an update every day for a match, for a profile, meaning it will look and scan your matches every day to see what new matches you have, that's 3 credits. And an auto cluster analysis costs 25 credits. So credits are the equivalent of $1 in US dollars, and so a $5 would be 500 credits. So in other words, an auto cluster analysis is about a quarter, 25 cents. And currently, when you sign up for a new account at Genetic Affairs, you'll get about 200 credits for free, which will allow you to do several auto cluster analyses. Okay, so once you see that you have chosen an auto cluster, you'll get a notification that it's successful, and it will tell you that it takes about 10 minutes to perform, in which time it will send the results to your email. So you're not going to be looking at the Genetic Affairs website for your cluster. You're actually going to be finding it in your email. You will receive an email with several files. A couple of them are .csv or spreadsheet files, and one of the files ends with .html. So when you get the email, it will look something like this. Here you can say, I've gotten the email at my Gmail account, and it says for profile XYZ, whatever the name is, an auto cluster analysis has been performed. Access it through the attached HTML file. So you can see here I get 3 files, one with a list of matches, one with a list of shared matching, and then the final one, which is the .html. Now don't open this from your email. Instead, save it to your desktop and open it from there. You want to open it in your browser. Okay, this is going to be happening in your browser. So you open it in Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Internet Explorer, whatever your browser is. For most of us, 60% of us, it will be Chrome. Once it opens, you can see it is initially unclustered. It's just all of these matches. When you scroll down this page here, what will happen is it will then automatically cluster. So here, for example, now this is a new cluster. So it goes from what we see here to what we see here. Now we have 7 clusters, orange, green, red, purple, and so on. And so what this is each cluster is a group of shared matches. So you can see here that there are, it reports 21 people in cluster 2. So what that means is there will be 21 people that are compared going this way and this way. And in the middle, of course, this dark line is where a person matches themselves. And here you can see that, let's pick this person. This person matches almost everyone in this shared match cluster except for a few missing people out here. Whereas let's say there are some people like this person which matches absolutely everyone in this shared match cluster. But clearly most of the people match most of the individuals in the cluster. So this is a very tight cluster. So if you scroll down this page, what you'll see is it will tell you that you use thresholds of 900 centimorgans for a high and 9 centimorgans for a low. And it identified a number, a total of 92 matches that it used in that clustering. Okay, so now I can say, well, all right, that's a good number. I can use this analysis, or if I want, I can go back and change the thresholds and try it over again. Now, when I scroll down even further, this is the real bulk of the information that's provided in the AutoCluster, and that is it will tell me the names of the individuals that are in each of these clusters. So for example, this is showing me information about cluster 5, cluster 6, cluster 7, and it will tell me each of the individuals that are within that cluster. So if we look at this, for example, we can see in cluster 5 it reports a couple of individuals there, and that corresponds to that brown cluster 5. So the real value of the clustering is the chart at the bottom that tells you who is inside each of these clusters. Now, once we have these clusters, they look great. They're fantastic visualizations. They're really interesting, but how do we actually use these? What are they telling us, and how can we use what it tells us in our genealogical research? Well, it's important to note, first of all, that clusters are clues only, and I cannot repeat that enough. This is not proof of anything. It is certainly DNA evidence, but it is important to note that it is clues only. It requires a lot of follow-up work to ensure that what we hypothesize about these clusters is the most likely reason for the clustering. And the hypothesis for a cluster is this: a group of shared matches are likely or possibly related through a common ancestor. That's the basis for genetic networks. That's the basis for shared matching. That's the basis for in common with. That people within a cluster, within a group, are likely related through a common ancestor. And so finding the common ancestor for some of the people in a cluster then suggests the common ancestor for all of them. Right? Again, this is just a clue. It's a hypothesis. It is not proof on its own. So if I can look at a cluster and I can find the common ancestor for some of the people in that cluster, that then suggests that the other people in that cluster are related to me through the same ancestry. Okay, so let's look at an example of this. All right, so what we want to do then is we want to review the trees of a cluster one at a time to look for common ancestry. So we take cluster 1. Look at the trees of cluster 1 and try to find a pattern. Are there a common ancestry in that cluster, among the trees of that cluster, that suggest what the relationship is? And then the common ancestry that we identify, if we're able to, is the clue or the arrow for that cluster. All right. So let's look at this. We're going to look at cluster number 2 first. This is an example of a cluster diagram from Genetic Affairs, and there to the right is the tree of the individual that took the DNA test to create this cluster. What we're going to do is we're going to look at cluster number 2 here, the green cluster. So what do we do? Well, the first thing we do is we scroll down the page to find the table for cluster number 2. All right. So what do we do here? All right, this is an ancestry account. So what I'm going to do is there are 11 people in this cluster. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open all 11 profile matches for this cluster. So I'm going to open each one of those all at the same time. I'm going to have 11 new tabs that open up. And as you can see, some of these people have a tree. Now, what this will show you is here, for example, all of these people that have numbers here have a tree, and that's the size of their tree. But note, this does not report people that have an unlinked tree. So I could have more trees here than what I see. This won't report those unlinked trees. So open all of these profiles, every single one, and what we're going to do is we're simply going to review the trees of these individuals, if there are any. Now, you're going to have some small clusters that have no trees, and that's going to be a lot harder because you're going to have to find ways to ask them for trees or to create trees and so on. But if there are trees, and we have many in this particular cluster, what I do is I open all of those. I look for trees that have common surnames, common locations, any clues, any patterns, any relationships among the people here. That's what I'm going to be looking for. Because once I find that, that's going to be the clue or the arrow that points me towards the origin or the reason for the cluster. Why does this cluster exist? Because of relationship through a common ancestor. Here, when I open up all of these trees, I find in several of them, but not all of them, which is common, I find that many of them have the Cowell family in their tree. So therefore, I can tentatively identify this cluster as a Cowell cluster. What does that mean? It means that this test taker is likely related to the individuals here in green through the Cowell family. And so what that means is the people that have Cowell in their tree, well, I could have already hypothesized this. The value to this really is that the people that didn't have Cowell in their tree but are clustering within that green cluster, that therefore suggests they're related to the Cowell family. And I could contact them and I can say, do you have the Cowell family in your tree, and so on. And now I'm actually giving them useful information instead of simply saying, we're related, do you want to compare information? And now I have a focus for our relationship. Right? So, as I said before, this tells me therefore that the people in this cluster that don't have Cowell in their tree are likely related through this Cowell family. It is not proof, but it is a clue, a very, very powerful, very strong clue about our relationship. So what do? We just rinse and repeat. We do this process now for all the other clusters, and we try to figure out where those clusters line into our tree. A lot of them, you're not going to be able to decipher where they fit in with your tree. Potentially because the matches might be distant, they might not have trees associated with them, they might not have good trees, they might not have accurate trees. And so what you can do is you can do the legwork to try to figure it out. You can build trees for these individuals, you can use documentary evidence to figure out how they might be related, and so on. So it often requires a lot of this legwork. But the goal is to get to something that looks like this. Now you can see here I have 6 of these clusters identified and tied into the tree. And I want to also note it's not uncommon to have multiple clusters for a particular line. So for example here you can see I have a couple of them that are the Spicer family, a couple that are the Cowell family, and so what that may represent is people that are just clustering differently, or they might represent different portions of the Spicer family. So maybe one is the father of the Spicer here, for example. Maybe one is the mother of the Spicer, and so on. So we can explore that a little bit further by looking at the trees and so on of the individuals in each of those clusters. We're going to get back to the gray boxes here, but one interesting thing to note is there are a lot of people that won't cluster closely with a particular group. So here, for example, we have a large group of gray boxes here. What you'll note is, though, that they align here with the Spicer family this way and with the Mullen family this way. And indeed, we can see the Mullen and Spicers are married here. And in fact, these are potentially descendants of that Spicer-Mullen marriage, which was far enough back in time where that's certainly possible. There are many, many descendants of that marriage. These might just be other relatives of the Spicer and Mullen families, particularly if there is, if they were married from the same place, maybe they had other relationships, and so on. Another evidence, that you're going to see, I apologize. Here, for example, you can see these individuals in this gray box here, they align with the Cowell family here, and they align with the Cowell family here. So they're sort of, in a way, they're linking together these two Cowell clusters. So look at these gray boxes too. They can be really interesting in researching these family lines. Right? So don't rule those out. Okay. In order to figure out who those gray boxes are, often what you'll do is you'll just highlight them or hover over them, and then when you come over, you'll see a box will be red here, and you can hopefully figure out the name and find that person in your match tree and so on. Okay. Now, I can't emphasize this enough that clustering is not proof. It is only a clue. You have to do all the documentary research necessary to examine your findings. You're not done when you find a common ancestor. It is just the very beginning of the research that's necessary to verify the trees of the other individuals, to ensure that the person you think took the test, and so on. A lot of additional work is needed, but these clusters are incredibly powerful clues for our research. So please consider joining the Genetic Genealogy Tips and Techniques group on Facebook. We've been discussing these AutoClusters quite a bit in the past couple of days. And if you're interested also in following along with additional and future YouTube videos that I create, consider scrolling down and clicking the subscribe button. Thank you very much.